Good morning and welcome back to the One Celtic Fans View this morning. Anybody that's watched this channel for any length of time will know that I want a bigger SPFL. I think that the current format is done and dusted. I think that the split is a joke and it does teams out of hundreds of thousands of pounds. And I just think playing each other 4 times a season is past. But the SPFL have thought about making the league smaller to protect the Edinburgh Derby, the Dundee Derby. And fans of a certain age will remember that the Dundee Derby was never a thing. It was always about the new firm, which was Dundee United and Aberdeen. Because in the 1980s, Dundee United and Aberdeen were fantastically successful. And what happened to those teams? People say it's because the money that Celtic and Rangers get, well, not Rangers because they went into being liquidated in a new club, but it's the money that Celtic has and has coming in on an ongoing basis that makes it unfair. With the current 12-team Premiership model potentially set for an overhaul, which I think is, look, make it a bigger league, play each other twice. They only want to maintain this part of the playing each other 4 times in the Glasgow Derby is to protect the tiny little minuscule deal that we get from Sky Television. Sky's not interested in any other games. Over the years, the coverage that Sky gives you is just terrible. I mean, it is terrible. A 10-team league would be a disaster. It would be a throwback to the 1990s. And I wonder what happened in the 1990s. But anyway, we move on from it. Tell me what you think in the comments. Do you think it should be a 12-team league, a 14 or a 16-team league? They want to preserve the frequency of major derbies in the league for Sky. That's it. That is it. It's not for financial reasons because, let's face it, if you can only fill your stadium twice a year when you're playing in a derby, and then especially the Edinburgh Derby, since they give the away fans the full stadium, but they reduce it for other fans. So, yeah, hell mend them. They need a lot of people to support it, and the votes must be 11 out of 12 Premiership clubs for all of what they want to do. But I just think make the league bigger. Get away from this nonsense of the split. I think the split is terrible for the game, and anybody that knows the channel knows my thoughts on it. So we'll move on. Brendan Rodgers yesterday spoke to Celtic Television, and he gave a fresh update on Kasper Schmeichel, and he was hopeful that the keeper could. This is the important things. He said that Kasper thinks it could be earlier, but we think it could be 5 to 6 weeks. The injury that was sustained during the international break makes him immediately unavailable. We all know this. He missed the game at the weekend and he's not going to be in and around the team for the next 5-6 weeks, which takes us out towards the end of the season. Now, can he come back before the end of the season? And would it be fair? Would it be fair on Sinisalo? If Sinisalo goes clean sheet crazy between now and the end of the season, a bit like what Kasper did at the beginning of the season, would it be unfair on Sinisalo to then take him out of his moment of glory of winning the league with Celtic and getting his hands on the league trophy? Or would it only be fair to bring Kasper Schmeichel back in, as he's the keeper that's done it through the majority of the season? And would it also be unfair to then take Sinisalo out the first team and bring Kasper back in if we do get to Hampden for the Scottish Cup final? Tell me what you think in the comments. And do you think that 5 to 6 weeks is realistic? Because let's face it, Brendan Rodgers did say that James Forrest would be out for 5 or 6 weeks, and James Forrest has been out for 3 months. But we'll see how this one pans out. I think it's just it's a wait and see game, isn't it? He did give updates on James Forrest and Paulo Bernardo. They've returned from injury. Liam Scales is expected to be ready for the upcoming match against Kilmarnock before the end of the split, which will be fantastic to see him back, even though there's not much chance of Scales getting into the team past Trusty and Norowski. Because let's face it, Big Rocky has come out of cold storage and he's not a bad player. He's proven, and let's face it, Liam Scales will be having nightmares because it was when Rocky came into the team that Liam Scales was thinking, that's me, I'm done, I'm going up to Aberdeen, I'm going back to Aberdeen. And could it finally come to fruition, even maybe years later, but could the money that was spent on big Rocky himself, could that be money well spent? We did spend over £4 million for the player. You would expect him to be of a decent standard. He hasn't really had a chance. Injury has plagued him at his time at Celtic, but could be this towards the end of the season that he keeps Trusty out. Trusty's still injured. The manager never said anything about Trusty in his interview yesterday, but we'll see what happens with that. I think he believed that he is there about coming back, but we'll wait and see. Dyson Maida's contribution. Brendan Rodgers said that he's been an exceptional performer for Celtic since moving into the striking role. And Brendan Rodgers then went on to say in the interview, and this is an interesting one, because a lot of people will say, this is just Celtic penny pinching. It's Celtic penny pinching. It's the biscuit tin mentality. But Brendan Rodgers said, look, it's easier for us to go out and get a top winger than it is to go out and get a top striker. So they would rather go out and spend money on trying to get in another winger to the club. They believe it's easier to get a top winger into the club than it is to get a top striker. So will this mean that Celtic will go out? And a lot of you said in the comments, I've read a lot of your comments, I've been busy with work, but and the laptop situation hasn't got any better. It's the blown motherboard is gone, and I'm just waiting on a new laptop arriving. But will Celtic spend serious money in trying to keep Dyson Maida at the club? If they see him as the number one striker going forward, and they want to keep him for a number of years, there will come a time that Celtic will have to accept the inevitable, and he will be sold for good money, whether it's this summer or it's a couple of summers down the line. We'll have to wait and see. Hopefully Celtic will get out the biscuit tin mentality. And let's face it, if Kieran Tierney is coming back to be one of the most highly paid players at the club, do you not think it should be Dyson Maida, Celtic? Wouldn't you put Dyson Maida? If Dyson Maida is the one that scores the goals, if Dyson Maida that basically wins you the league, we need to put the emphasis on how important, and Brendan Rodgers said it himself yesterday, it's easier to replace a winger than it is to go and place Dyson Maida as a striker. I mean, we could bring in a striker, put Dyson out to the wing, but this tells me that the deal might be dead and buried for Mateus from Brøndby, and I think that Celtic will be looking at an easy option in trying to keep Dyson Maida. They know that they've got Adam Eder, and then you've got young Johnny Kenny. So that gives Brendan the three strikers that he's looking for to help a team throughout the season. So then does he go out and spend more money on a winger? Do we really need to? We brought in Jota. Paulo Bernardo has been talking about Jota. We'll talk about that in a second. But the manager said, look, he scored, I think it's 15 goals in 11 games. And with his pressing and movement and work rate, he's just invaluable to the club. I mean, what would it cost for us to go and replace a like for like with Dyson Maida through the middle? For me, I think he's a much better striker than Kyogo Furuhashi. I noticed one of the publications, Scottish media publications, are saying that Celtic fans have given Kyogo the cold shoulder. Now, don't know that he left. And generally, when a player leaves the club, that's it. He's forgotten about. He's not forgotten about, but he's in the past. You're not going to keep praising him with love, are you? Anyway, Brendan Rodgers went on to speak about the St Johnstone match preview, talking about and highlighting the importance of the next match. It is just the next match. It gets us one step closer to winning the SPFL title for the 55th time. Yes, it is time to ramp up the 55th time. Like again. Challenging in the league, tactical improvements from St Johnstone, the new manager, that will all represent a challenge, Brendan Rodgers said. But let's talk about Paulo Bernardo, because he's been talking about Jota, and he reckons that we'll still see the best from Jota, who just came back at the last transfer window. And the fact that Jota hadn't been playing a lot of games, the fact that we bought him for 6.5 million? We bought him for when after him being on loan from Benfica. He came to Celtic and he was fantastic the first time round. He then had a little move to Saudi Arabia where he was earning a ridiculous amount of money, an absolutely ridiculous amount of money, and then ended up in France in Rennes, the graveyard of football players. I'd say it's Rennes because let's face it. I mean, it's a nice little town. I did go there with Celtic back in 2019. It's a fantastic, is it a city or a town? I'm not too sure, but it's a fantastic little place, cracking little stadium. It's a stadium that I would go back to if obviously Celtic were playing there. Fantastic little stadium, and outside the stadium was amazing. The fact that they closed the road off and they set up these, it's not even hot dog vans, it's barbecues. Barbecue and a beer outside the stadium. It was completely bizarre. It was brilliant, absolutely brilliant. So it was just it is a different type of going to the game rather than getting a overpriced burger outside Celtic Park and frozen chips. But anyway, we move on. Jota, he said, although he hit the back of the net against Hearts to make it 4 goals in 8 games in his second spell at Celtic, with quite a few assists chucked in. Paulo Bernardo said, look, I remember I'm back in Benfica, and I think that we've not seen the best of Jota yet. I think the best of him is yet to come. People will say we've seen the best of Jota the first time round. Has he hit the heights that he had the first time round? The fact that he'd been cold storage pretty much the first half of the season, and he's just been getting up to speed. Paulo Bernardo says he's a really important member of the squad. At his age, I think there's more to come from him, and he's got more to show, that's for sure. Are we getting Jota just at the right time? He's moving into that spell of his career, that age of his career where he starts to hit the heights as a player, and I think that's what Paulo Bernardo's basically talking about. He said that Jota's going to have a fantastically big role for Celtic next season. Watch this space, and he'll prove that he's still a 25 million plus player. Anyway, that's it, done and dusted for today. I think I will try and do it live tonight. Sorry I didn't do one last night. I had been at the dentist, and you know what it's like, being at the dentist, half your face is like... Anyway, I'll move on from that, and make sure you join us tonight. We'll do it live. We'll preview the game this weekend. Kasper Schmeichel's been ruled out until 5 or 6 weeks. Could be back before the end of the season. We'll see what happens with that one. Liam Scales has to return from injury, which is fantastic for Liam, and it puts a little bit more pressure on the guys at the back. All we need to do now is sort out that midfield. Is the midfield, here's the question for you for tonight, is the midfield the area that needs the most improvement? Is the midfield the area that needs most improvement in the team going forward next season? On that note, have an absolutely fantastic day, Celtic fans, wherever you are, all around the world.